Hi, good morning, all. Good morning. We're going to start this morning by telling you a little bit about LinkedIn's speaker series. LinkedIn has had a speaker series in the US for the past couple of years. They have had some incredible speakers like Deepak Chopra, Sheryl Sandberg, Barack Obama, to name but a few. No pressure, Brendan, at all. So we're delighted this morning to have our very first speaker series in EMEA. We're having it here this morning in Dublin. And the main goal of LinkedIn's speaker series is to expose us, our employees, to innovative thinkers and inspiring ideas, and that would help all of us be more productive and successful in our lives, in our careers. And that's the real main goal of it. It also talks really about it. One of our core values is that relationships matter and that relationships in the community matter. So that's an important other element of the speaker series. And all of our speakers have come to LinkedIn by employee referral. And today is no different. So Kurum, who has worked in Dublin for the past 2 years, has met Brendan through a mutual friend and the Sandbox program, which they're going to talk a little bit more about later. And it's really through that mutual friendship, that relationships matter, that Kurum has invited Brendan here to speak to us this morning. So thank you to Kurum for that. And now, let me introduce our speaker and our very first speaker in an EMEA context, Brendan O'Driscoll. We're very pleased to have you here this morning. Thank you for joining us. And Brendan is the CEO of a company called Soundwave. He's going to talk a little bit more about that during our talk this morning. It's backed by Mark Cuban and ACT Venture Capital. And it's a mobile music discovery startup, started up in 2012. I won't even attempt to butcher the unique selling points or anything about it. I'm going to leave that very much up to Brendan and to Kurum. And we're doing this morning in the format of a fireside chat. We really want as much audience participation and anything as you want. So definitely put up your hands, ask questions. We really want this to be interactive. So welcome, Brendan.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. You know, you don't often hear about Irish startups going to South by Southwest out in the US and making a road trip out there. And when I first heard about Brendan and his team making a trip out there and what they were doing, I was just fascinated by the team, by the work that they're doing and their product. And so I reached out to a friend of mine in the Sandbox network. It's a community of innovators where Brendan's also a part of. And I said, I need to meet this guy. Can you make the introduction? When I met him, I felt like Brendan has some great experiences to share. And the transformative journey that he's taking with his own career, as well as with how he's pushing his team to think about ways of doing music discovery in new ways, is quite interesting. And I thought it would be great to share that learning, that experience with our LinkedIn team. So Brendan, thank you for being here. What we'll do is we have about 4 to 5 themes that we will touch on, anywhere from your background to how you're thinking about it, and then we will open it up for the Q&A on that front. But what I'd love to do is to set you up. It'd be great for you to just talk about what Soundwave is and how you actually came up with that idea.
Yeah, sure. So Soundwave is it's a free application for iPhone and Android. And essentially what it does is it tracks the songs that people listen to on their phone as they listen to those songs. So it's essentially like a social network for music, something like Twitter for music, where you can follow people you're interested in, whether they're your friends, family, or just people you might know or have an interest in. And you can see what music they're playing in real time. So I suppose one of our kind of, from a technical challenge or technical point of view, one of our unique abilities was the ability to pull what songs people were playing from the native music player without affecting the user flow or without affecting the native music player. So that was a big one for us. So the app, I suppose the premise of the app is that you can discover new music leveraging your social network and the people that you follow. So if you want to listen to some rock music, you might not know very much about rock music, but you have a buddy who knows all about it, you can go straight to his profile and you can see what rock songs he's playing. Once you've discovered a song, you can click into that song, you can then stream it on Soundwave, you can look at the YouTube video, you can purchase it, or you could share it with your friends. So really it's a kind of a lazy man's way of finding new music. I think the offline experience that we try to recreate online was, a chat you might be having with your friends down the bar in a pub, asking what new music they're listening to or what concerts they've been to or what music that you should listen to. That was always been a way that we used to discover new music. And then kind of in this transition into the digital age, I think that kind of that social interaction was somewhat lost. So in terms of the idea, in terms of how we actually came up with the idea, it was pretty simple. Walking down the streets, we saw everybody had big old kind of headphones on. They were all the rage there a couple of years ago. And so everybody had their headphones plugged into smartphones. And we knew that smartphones were the most connected devices in the world. But still somehow I could have my headphones plugged into my smartphone and I could see someone with their headphones plugged into their smartphone, but we couldn't communicate via our smartphones to understand what each other were listening to. We just thought that was pretty crazy. So we kind of set about trying to tackle this problem of sharing with each other what we were listening to. We looked into the market and we saw that there were some solutions. The first one was this type of product where you could manually upload or manually type in the songs you were listening to. So every time you listen to a song, you need to open the app, go into the app, select the song or type in the song. And we didn't think that was feasible. The other solution that we looked at or that we had seen other people try was to build their own music player within their product and try and convince everybody to play their music through that music player within their product. Again, we didn't think that was feasible because you're taking on the likes of the Apple iPod on the iPhone and taking on the Android players on Android. So we set about really trying to do something a little bit different. We kind of, from a technical point of view, we were thinking outside the box, and we came up with a solution to track all music on the phone without disrupting anybody's user journey or anybody's user flow. So that's in a nutshell what Soundwave is.
And whenever you come up with an idea, right, I'm sure you had a number of ideas that we were considering. Can you talk about, was there any other competing idea in your mind when you were thinking of doing a startup, or were you so laser focused on music discovery that you wanted to do it from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. We actually, funny story, we almost built Soundwave out of spite or as a grudge because we went to an accelerator program with a different idea and we didn't get in, and really didn't take that very well. So we spent 6 months brainstorming all day, every day, 100,000 different ideas, just purely to show that we could get into the accelerator, never really having an intention to follow up with the idea. We just wanted to go back to the guys that said no and say, okay, now we got in, and not actually participate in the program. And that's kind of how Soundwave was born, I suppose. So the idea we went with initially, which I still have a kind of a soft spot for, was an idea. Casual gaming that you could essentially bet on. So we're seeing the rise of it's kind of a tricky area, but we're seeing the rise of all these online betting websites, so Paddy Power and Betfair and BetDash, and we're seeing people betting on traditional casino games, so card games and roulette and all these types of board games. We thought it was really interesting that, especially because we were in college at the time, everybody was sitting at the back of the lecture halls and everybody was either betting on these types of games, or they were playing simple two-player games against each other. So they were playing little racing games or little action games against each other. So what we wanted to do is essentially combine the two together so that you could play little kind of multiplayer action games against each other and bet small stakes of money on the outcome. So play snakes and ladders against each other for 50 cents, and the loser loses and you double up and play again. So just kind of combining those two worlds.
Well, with 200,000 downloads and counting, I think you're doing okay.
Yeah. For Soundwave, not that one.
With when you think about your skill sets and what you've done, when someone goes to your LinkedIn profile, they don't exactly see Java and HTML and HTML5 and other things that are important for the development of the platform. It's really important to kind of make sure you have the right team, you bring on the right folks. How did you think about taking that idea to reality?
Sure. So I mean, it was very much a two-person team at the start. From the outset, when I was brainstorming on the new idea, I was brainstorming with my co-founder, and it was for a particular reason, because he was doing a PhD in computer science at the time. So I never would have dreamt, essentially, of trying to go it alone without any kind of computer science knowledge. But just in terms of my own background, I have a mechanical engineering undergraduate degree, did a master's then in innovative sustainable energy engineering. So it's literally the opposite, I suppose, of where I ended up. But in that mechanical engineering degree, I suppose what we were taught is essentially problem solving and how to think logically and in a step-by-step approach. Taking a big task and kind of breaking it down into little smaller, more manageable tasks. And I really took that part of engineering to heart, and I suppose that's kind of what I brought to the table in terms of product development. And then Aidan, my co-founder, he was very much the classic kind of tech guy and coding and doing all that crazy stuff that you see in the movies and hacking away and all that sort of stuff. So I think it was a kind of a pairing of our two skill sets that really helped. I was driving the product development, and then he was actually realizing it and building it. So I think it's important to have that match as well.
And then how did you go about building your team in terms of who's employee number 3, 4? You're now at around 10 and growing?
8 or 9 now, yeah. So yeah, it started off with the two of us. We went to the accelerator program. Things started to go really well. We had a number of just kind of college interns just really helping us out whenever they could in the evenings and the weekends, just trying to get experience for themselves. But it really started to snowball. So we realized essentially that I was really good at opening doors and I wasn't really good at following up, or I didn't have the attention span to close them. So I was going out there running a million miles an hour, meeting all these amazing people and opening all these potential great opportunities, and then kind of getting excited by the next opportunity and running after that one. So we realized quite quickly that we needed a third person that could come along and close all those doors after me and kind of sign up and kind of keep a steady pace in terms of what we were doing. So we were at an event here in Dublin called Dublin Beta. It's where a number of early stage startups, they kind of get together every 6 months and they demo and they showcase. And we were showcasing our idea, and this one guy came up and just asked 3 or 4 really insightful questions. And then just from that, I said, I said to Aidan, this guy's kind of interesting. He was asking a couple of really interesting ideas, and he just left the law space. He was a solicitor, and he went to set up his own idea, his own startup, and thankfully it was a terrible idea. So I sent Aidan an email. I said, I think we can nab this guy. He's already made the hard jump of leaving his kind of career path and trying to set up his own thing. I kind of relate to him what my thoughts on his idea. And so we set about meeting up with this guy, Craig. We grabbed a coffee with him, and straight away we knew that he'd be a great fit for what we were doing. He had the same vision in terms of what he wanted to do with his idea as we wanted to do with Soundwave. And we recognized that his ability to kind of really to execute and to look after the details and dot the I's and cross the T's and really look after the minor details was an area that we didn't have a competence in, and an area that he excelled in. So we took Craig in essentially as our third founder, and we consider him 100% to be our founder. And he looks after the operational side of things. So when we were going through the program, he's the one that had the beautiful job of doing up our projections and our Excel sheets and our business plans and really the nitty gritty of running a business, while I was just fannying around at the front talking to people. So yeah, I mean, I don't envy him, but yeah, he was really essential to our trio. So yeah, we raised with just the 3 of us essentially. We raised our first seed round. So
that's great. And recently in March, you were out at South by Southwest, as I was alluding to earlier, and it's not the typical experience when I read about it. Typically, when people go to Austin to this conference, where a number of startups get together, they book a flight. So these guys were in San Francisco, but you chose not to, and you chose to rent an RV, which is not something I had heard of.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
What about that experience?
We were going to go over to this event, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and it's kind of a big event. It's a week long and kind of combination of tech and music and design and all sorts of different areas, all kind of rolled into one event. It was kind of a big deal for us to go over because, you know, we had 3 of us had to fly over from Dublin, and it was a long way away. And there's it's kind of like a mythical place in terms of startup land is to get to South by Southwest, and there's all sorts of different theories on how you should approach it. And a lot of companies used to launch there, so Twitter launched there and Foursquare launched there, and people use it as a platform to get a lot of attention. As the event grew and as it became more popular, it became harder and harder to reach out and get attention at that event. So we were considering launching there back in March, and we were thinking, the pros and cons of it. And we decided in the end not to launch and instead just use it as a kind of a very valuable 2 weeks or a period of time to go and meet as many people as possible. The problem with South by Southwest, though, is all of Silicon Valley flies from San Francisco to Austin, Texas, and they've only got one thing on their mind, and that's really to not work and to get pissed on free booze. So, sorry, my language. But that's really kind of their goals. So you're there as a super eager kind of young entrepreneur or as a startup, and they're there and they're a VC or they're a kind of a big partner in a company, and they're just solely focused on the sun and on the beer, and you're there trying to pitch them. So it doesn't really work that well. So we kind of came up with this different strategy or different idea where we'd go out and instead of trying to pitch them like everybody else was, we'd just go for beers with them. And try and befriend them, but we didn't want to go over and just make lots of friends. So we kind of came up with this idea of doing an extended trip where we do a week in Austin, having beers with those guys. But then also we'd follow up the week after when they were back in business mode, and we'd be friends by then, and they'd actually take our calls and they'd meet us. So what we did is we flew to Austin, Texas. Again, it was a last-minute decision to go to South by Southwest, and accommodation is booked out months in advance. So what we did is we rented an RV. Biggest mistake of our lives, but we did it. So there's four smelly guys in an RV, and we lived in that RV for the week of the event. But then afterwards, we drove from Austin, Texas, across the country, stopping off at a bunch of various different startup hubs, meeting all these guys that we had been talking to the week before. So we drove, a couple thousand miles all the way through Austin. We went to Las Vegas. We did the startup tour there, and then we went to San Francisco, and we spent a couple of weeks chasing up and knocking on doors of all the people that thought they were never going to meet us again, but then had the pleasant surprise of seeing us again when they were in business mode. And that month-long trip really taught us a lot. It taught us that, well, first off, the big thing for us is we were always slightly intimidated by Silicon Valley. The best and brightest in the world with the best ideas in the world with the best capital and the best investors, and we thought it was just they were operating in a different realm. But after going over there, we realized that, hey, we were the same as them. They had the same ideas, they had the same skill sets, and we had every kind of right to try and take those guys on as much as possible from Dublin. So it kind of gave us confidence to realize that we could do what we wanted to do. And it also, the second thing is it just opened up in terms of connections. I know it's an important team in relationships with you guys, but it opened up an amazing set of doors that wouldn't have been possible if we were just sending cold emails and cold calls the whole time. So having met these guys face to face and built a relationship with them, we could go back to Ireland and build upon those relationships and open even more doors. So it's definitely excelled us and brought us a lot farther on than we thought possible. And those were the reasons, I suppose, those are the excuses I gave to the board as well to allow us to go to the States for a month in an RV and have a lot of fun. So,
when you were out in the Valley, did you intentionally go with the idea of raising funds? What was your thinking when it came to fundraising?
Yeah, so we actually closed our round here in Ireland with US investors without having been to the States, which something we were quite proud of, because there's been a trend in recent years that Irish entrepreneurs, they kind of get a really good idea and they get some initial traction, and then they book their first flight to California, and they set up an office there and they hire all their team there and they do all their fundraising there. And as good as that is, it's not something we really wanted to do. We wanted to try and build our business here. So we try to flip it on its head, and we actually raised capital here from Act Venture Capital, the largest VC fund here in Ireland, but also from a number of US-based investors. We actually did all that by email. Which is something that we're quite proud of. We got the US guys to come look at an Irish company as opposed to the Irish company going over touting their stuff to the US guys. So,
and when you were in the fundraising process, did you feel that you were oversubscribed in any way? Was there more interest than you had anticipated? Yeah,
definitely. It was great. The VC came along first, and they underwrote the full amount that we were fundraising for. So it was about $1 million, and they said, hey, we'll give you the full amount, but we'll make you pay for it, and we'll put a whole lot of kind of rules and regulations on you, and it's not going to be a fun ride. If you want to kind of alleviate some of our risk, you can go out and find other investors if you want, and replace some of our money with their money. So that gave us kind of a really good setup to then go out and knocking on doors and talking to investors. Not saying, hey, please, can you invest in us, but saying, hey, we actually have the cash already, but we really like you. We think you'd be good on this, and if you're interested, there's an opportunity here for you as well as for us. So it kind of changed again. We had a bit more leverage, I suppose, talking to the investors. So we actually, I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with Mark Cuban, but he owns the Dallas Mavericks over in the States, and he's kind of a high-profile, eccentric billionaire guy. But we sent him an email, just a 3-sentence email saying, hey, this is us, this is what we're doing, and we're closing around in the next week, and you pretty much have a week to decide whether or not you want in. Expecting no reply. I didn't even know if it was the right email address. I sent it as a joke more than anything else. I think I spelled my name wrong at the end of it as well. So I really wasn't expecting a reply, but he wrote back 10 minutes later saying, sounds interesting, send more info. So I sent him on more information. He said, you have a prototype? I said, we do. So I sent him on the prototype. He asked a couple more interesting, kind of insightful questions. And then like 3 days later, we had a big, nice check from Mark Cuban, which was great.
Can you talk about the couple of questions he asked you?
Yeah, so he was really impressed with that we were kind of doing data collection in the music space, but he was extremely interested in what other applications our technology would have as well. So straight away he said, okay, you can pull data on what people are listening to, but what else can you pull? So like, whether it's a different product or an expansion on our current product, could you, for example, figure out what ebooks people are reading or what podcasts they're listening to or what content they're consuming in terms of news and use that and aggregate that and kind of derive interesting patterns from that data too. When I told him we could, even though I wasn't quite sure if we could, he was really interested. So I think he was looking at the bigger picture straight away, which was something that we liked as well.
So that's great. Story of someone where you actually get the fundraising done without actually meeting someone.
Yeah, we still haven't met him actually. But he's great. He's got this name as being one of the most responsive guys in the world. He puts his email out and he writes back to, I think, like 99% of emails from anybody and everybody, from the basketball fans to the people following him in the tech world. He replies to everybody, and I would talk to him 2-3 times a week by email, and his response time is like sub 5 minutes. So you can literally ask him anything and he'll be back to you, which is great.
And as part of this awareness building, you got a couple of pretty interesting endorsements recently, right? You heard about Stephen Fry, who's rocking about it, and you also heard Steve Wozniak, right? The Apple co-founder, mentioning this is a music product that fits my life beautifully.
Yeah.
How did you get him to say that?
Again, it was just slightly opportunistic. We had heard that Steve was going to be up in Derry at Culture Tech, giving a talk, and I think the rumor was it was something $150,000 or something to do this 45-minute talk, which was crazy. But they got him there anyway. I'm not charging $145,000, but they got him there anyway, and then I decided, hey, why not? It's kind of worked before. So actually on LinkedIn, believe it or not, I added him to see if he would respond. And he did. So he added me on LinkedIn. So then I rang up Culture Tech and I said, hey, we're an interesting startup. We kind of got a bit of a cool story. Maybe would you give us kind of like one of the graveyard slots at this event just so that we can go? And they did. So then I straight away sent Steve an email saying, hey, as chance happens, I'm actually just somehow ending up at the same event as you. I'm going to be talking as well. It'd be nice to trade some stories. And he again wrote back a LinkedIn mail and said, yeah, sure, why not? Let's meet at my hotel, sit down, we'll grab a coffee for an hour, and we can chat over your product, which was great. So they paid $140,000 or $150,000, and we paid for €2 for a coffee. So.
Talk about connecting people to make them more productive and successful here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you talk about what were some of the product features as you were working on that helped you kind of move the needle when it came to growth?
Yeah, so the product itself is inherently viral in that you download the app as an early adopter, and you're going to want to know your friends and the people you're interested in are listening to. So it's in your own best interest to share the app to as many people as possible. So I'll download it and I'll have 4 or 5 friends that I would love to know what they listen to. So I will send them the app so that they download it and I can see what they're listening to. And then when they download it, they'll have 4 or 5 friends that they'll want to know about what they're listening to. So the whole thing is set up from the outset to be kind of extremely viral.
And are there any countries where you see the virality is greater than others?
Yeah, big time. I mean, we're still just playing, so we've only been live, I think, 34, 35 days now. And really in the last month, we've just been doing a massive land grabbing exercise, trying to grab as many users as possible from anywhere. But now we're starting to run, now that that's kind of calmed down a bit and we pulled in about 200,000 users, we're starting to run little experiments. So, for example, we're running little ads in different countries, and we ran a tiny ad in Brazil, and it's had a massive uptake. And Brazil is now, like, I think, our third largest user base, which is great to see. You know.
What did that ad convey?
So one of the things we focus quite a lot on is localization. So when we launched, we localized into 14 languages. So we just pushed that out in Brazil in English, and then a week later in Portuguese, and it was just a basic ad, come download this app, and the uptake of the localized advert was incredible. You know,
so from a localization perspective, there's one piece which is the communication of just translating, and then is how you're actually conveying that message. Did you convey the message differently in Brazil versus other countries?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're starting to do now, and one of the things we're finding really interesting is localization is so much more than just translation, and we're seeing that different territories are using different services. So, for example, we're pulling in from Spotify and RDO and a bunch of kind of Western music players, but we went and talked to some guys over in India, and they'd never heard of Spotify or RDO, and they were saying, why hadn't we heard of Ghana, and that they had 50 million daily active users, and we didn't even know it existed. So there's a whole bunch of work that we can do to better localize our product, and I think that'll drive better uptake in those regions as well. And from what we've seen from the early users in terms of feedback, I mean, the users in those areas really appreciate the efforts that a company takes to properly localize. And we've had great letters and emails and messages from all over the world saying thanks for properly thinking about not just pushing out another English product at us.
And what's your typical user base like? Demographics wise?
Yeah, it definitely varies. I suppose it's slightly on the younger side, in that younger people tend to share more online content with each other. But I remember talking to my parents about this when we started, and they said, I don't get it. Why do I care? Why I don't care what anybody else is listening to. I'm in my ways, and I listen to my music. And I got my dad on it, and I got my uncle on it, and 5 minutes later, he was like, "Oh my God, I can see what my brother's listening to. This is incredible." And he's one of our biggest users now, which is crazy, So it's I suppose it's just this. Everybody's got that little bit of curiosity in them, so I think it appeals to most people.
And can you talk about? So there's a music discovery component, and then there's also an analytics component. Can you talk about the analytics component?
Yeah, sure. So we're very much focused now on our B2C play, which is consumer apps, iPhone and Android, and getting as much traction on that product and getting the user experience on that product as perfected as possible. There's a very separate play that we don't really talk about too publicly just yet because we're not quite ready, but it's a B2B play whereby we're collecting all this really interesting data about what people are listening to, where they are, when they're listening to it, and we can essentially serve this data back to the music industry and to the consumer industries to let people know essentially what's happening. So we're trying to create a Google Analytics for music. So if you're a band or a band manager, a music agent, a label, or a consumer brand like Coca-Cola or anybody else, you can understand the songs that people are listening to and where, and understand real-time music trends. So that's something that we're working on quietly in the background the whole time.
Is it too early to think about monetization?
Well, that is essentially the main monetization angle. So there's on the B2C side, there's a smaller monetization angle. If you discover a song and go on to purchase it, then we get a percentage of the sale just for facilitating or accommodating the transaction. But we're much more interested in monetizing the big data play.
And let me rephrase that. When monetization is discussed, of the different priorities that may be on the plate amongst you guys, I'm sure, where would monetization stack rank?
Sure. So we've got a pretty defined roadmap, and I think in 6 months' time we're really going to turn up monetization. We could, in the last 35 days, I think we've tracked 7.5 million song plays, and we've had all the labels, all the radio stations, all the big companies knocking on our door in the last month looking to pay for access to that data that we have. Sitting in our office now, but it's not our ultimate priority right now. I think it's a longer term picture that we're taking, whereby we want to grow the user experience and grow the user base, giving us access to more data rather than taking the low hanging fruit now and selling the existing data we have.
So a very relevant question for everyone when it comes to time management. You got a lot going on. You have people knocking on the door, a lot of interest. You want to stay focused. How are you able to prioritize your time? What's kind of the framework you use?
Just don't sleep, really. No,
How about a different one?
yeah. We're running agile kind of methodology in the office. It works really well. Everybody stands up, says what they need to do. We do 2-week sprint plans, so we break everything down into 2-week sprints. At the start of the 2-week sprint, you estimate all your tasks. So first off, you create a massive backlog of thousands of tasks. Then you prioritize them. Then you put time estimates on each task, and then you build 2-week sprints based out of those building blocks. So you take as many tasks as 2 weeks worth of time is, and then you start the sprint. Then every morning there's a daily stand-up, so everybody stands up and says, I estimated 6 hours, it's actually taking me 12 hours, so I'm going to rejig this, and kind of just does a daily recap every morning. And that's it. So every 2 weeks we push out a new version of the product with the contents of that sprint, and we sprint plan again for the next 2 weeks. So just 2 weeks by 2 weeks by 2 weeks, never looking too far.
And how do you think about the team where it is today and where you want to take it?
Sure. So I love our small kind of nimble team. We actually at one stage had like 12, 13 people, but it was too many people, and we actually scaled the team back so that it was a very trim team of everybody knew exactly what they were meant to be doing and being really good at that. So we enjoy having a small team, and it may mean that there's maybe slightly more work on each of us, but I think that's better, But we are looking forward to we're kind of expanding now, so we're going from 8 to 12 people now in the next month or two, which is something we're looking forward to as well.
Do you see your startup based in Dublin for the mid to long term as well?
Yeah, definitely. We've no intention of moving it anywhere else.
Well, if people are responding to your emails, even though they haven't seen you, why do that, right? When you think about the experience that you've gone through over the last year and a half and how the company's grown and the team has grown, what has been some of the most, the one or two transformative kind of experiences that you look back and you feel like you really developed professionally?
Yes, good question. Trying to think. I think we used to get work-life balance for us is extremely important because it's so tempting to just go gung ho at everything and sleep on your desk and do all that stuff they do in the movies, but it's not feasible long term. So for us, it was important we kind of promoting this strong culture inside the office that if you're good at what you do and you're able to do what you do well and you have a good plan, then you shouldn't be in the office like late in the evenings. You should be out enjoying the sun and doing whatever else you want to do, So for us, that was an important pivot that we make sure that we didn't burn out and kind of lose the love for what we're doing. So that was definitely time management was one of the most important. Also, chancing our arm a little bit is something that we've grown more accustomed to. So we're kind of firm believers that everybody's approachable and everybody's accessible. So we that's why we send out those emails to Stephen Fry and Stephen Wozniak and Mark Cuban and everybody else, because if it's a good, compelling idea, a good, compelling product with a good executed plan, then anybody will answer.
That's fantastic. What we'll do now is, I know there's so many of you, and I'm sure so many of you have a lot of different questions. So we'll open up the floor for questions. So Aoife here will take the mic.
Hi, Brendan. Welcome to LinkedIn, and congratulations having a great startup. I just wanted to get a bit behind the entrepreneur, really. And, a lot of people say that behind every entrepreneur, there's lots of failures before you've had your success. And maybe can you give us some ideas of what your failures were? And I guess a bit deeper question, do you think there's anything, different in the Irish psyche about how we deal with failure and success compared to the Americans and how that feeds into, successful startups like you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've tried everything. We brought the rickshaws into Dublin, so we built a fleet of rickshaws, the ones that go up and down Grafton Street. So we tried that for a while. Then the recession hit and people wouldn't, splash out on taking a rickshaw from the top of Grafton Street to the bottom. Believe me, they used to pay like €50 for that. It was crazy. So we tried that for a while. We tried... what else? A whole bunch of everything. I thought for a while Facebook was very interesting, and I thought taking an offline version of your online life would be interesting. So I wanted to essentially print off a yearly kind of log of your Facebook profile, all the conversations you had, all the pictures you had, and then I realized that printing and hardware is next to impossible without a budget. So we tried, just tried a whole bunch of different ideas, more for fun and as a challenge than anything else. Not really expecting to make any money, but more to just learn from it. So that was they were important lessons for us. In terms of the Irish psyche, I think there's a great culture here now, especially in the last couple of years. There's great supports that weren't there before to get stuff off the ground, up and running. People, I think a lot of the early stage stuff is based off of selling something that may not necessarily be there, or having the ability to kind of talk or talk a lot. I think Irish people have that trait, so I think that definitely helps convince. I think that you have to do a lot of convincing at the outset. You have to get people to invest in you and your idea, but there's nothing tangible there to see or feel or hold. So that's a tricky thing to do, and I think Irish people are really good at that. So.
Hi there, thank you for coming here. I have a quick question regarding the usability and how young people use these. Hello? All right. So my brother has a young kid, right? 14, 13-year-old kids. Do you have any parental control so they don't listen to the dirty version of Dr. Dre, for example?
Sure.
It's important. I'm a parent too.
Of course. So we're not operating in the music consumption space. So what people listen to on those players is not for us to decide. We've no impact or can't influence what people listen to. Our app is age rated, so it's got a 13 and over maturity level. So I think it's important for anybody that will be downloading apps to be abiding by those guides, and the parents to be looking at those maturity ratings for every product that their child is using. We do have options to delete or to remove certain songs from your profile as well. But again, we're just aggregating what songs people are listening to. We're not allowing them to listen to those songs. So I mean, if someone's to be listening to the dirty version of Dr. Dre, then they're doing that on Spotify or on their own music collection, not on Soundwave. So.
Hi. So you mentioned you went up for your seed round pretty early on. Could you tell us about the level of product that you had at that point?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So when we went for the seed round, we came out of the accelerator program. We had a very early MVP, so minimum viable product. It demonstrated that we had the ability to pull music from another product that wasn't ours. So we demonstrated that kind of music, or that data harvesting capabilities. It had a very poor front end on it. It looked like shit and didn't work properly, but it showed that it was possible. I think that was enough for the investors, coupled with our vision and what we wanted to do and our plans moving forward, for them to see the true potential. But there was definitely a very rigorous 2-month technical due diligence into all of our backgrounds as well, to ensure that we did have the capabilities to actually build what we said we could build. So that was kind of an intense period of time where the investors would have hired other teams, other kind of companies, and other tech experts to literally sit down line by line and look through our code and question why we did what and the reason behind the way we built what we built. So I think it's important that you can't underestimate that you definitely need to have something tangible to really invest. They're not just going to invest purely on words,
Hey, Dan. What would your advice be on when you're in that kind of earlier even startup phase, between looking for help and going to all the right people and asking for their help, asking for advice and looking for even funding, and then the other side of it where there's a few bad eggs in the mix as well, and protecting what you do have or what could be down the line?
Sure. So the best piece of advice I ever got was everybody has a million ideas. Nobody has the ability, not very many people have the ability to execute on those ideas. So we were told to shout from the rooftop about our idea, because the idea is worth nothing. It's your ability to execute on that idea and your belief that you can execute better than anybody else that also has an idea that's valuable, So I think it's common, and we definitely had it in our own psyche as well at the start, that you feel protective over your idea and you don't want to tell people because you feel somebody might come along and rob it. But you have to be of the mindset that if they take your idea, that you can still do it better. may not even be the case, but you have to believe that. Otherwise, you drive yourself crazy trying to think, okay, I have this great idea, but I don't want anybody to think or to hear about it because I might rob it. So we did the exact opposite. We shouted from the rooftops, and we asked anybody that would listen, would they sit down and have a coffee with us so that we can talk through the ins and outs of our idea. Many of those people could have taken our idea and run with it, and they would have been able to build it faster and better probably than we could at the time. But I think it's just the risk you have to take to get something off the ground. So I think to summarize this, the idea is not necessarily that important. It's the ability to execute on it.
Hi, so Curran mentioned earlier about the Sandbox program, which seems to be a place where people with innovative ideas come together. But now that you've actually got your business up and running, do you have any formal mentors, or is there any formal networks that you go to where you can get great advice from experienced entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so not formal networks as such, but I would be a strong believer again, and we're quite a young founding team, and I think one of the reasons, as our investors said to us, one of the reasons they invested in us is because we have this ability to constantly put up our hand and say we don't understand this, or we don't know what we're talking about with this region. We need somebody that does know to tell us what's actually going on here. So instead of taking an idea and running with it and maybe going off course and then recorrecting, we were constantly fact-checking ourselves against industry experts and domain experts. So we wouldn't have a formal network as such, but I would have, again, a set of LinkedIn contacts that I could hit up at any stage in time and say, hey, can we have a coffee or whatever it may be, So in that regard, I would have 50, 60 people that I would easily pick up a phone to and say, I don't understand this, can you explain it to me? So I think advisors are extremely important. It's kind of like they have the answers to the exam that you're about to sit, so just ask them instead of trying to guess, Yeah, it sounds like a sales pitch, but really I use LinkedIn every day. It's probably my main tool because, especially in my position, I'm pretty much dealing in people capital, trading people for people and knowledge for knowledge. So I'm constantly on LinkedIn, finding new people to talk to, and whether it's hiring or whether it's looking for another advisor, an investor, or really just checking out what competitors are doing. I'm constantly on LinkedIn sending messages. Yeah.
I just want to add that when you hear experiences like that, how LinkedIn is making folks like you very successful, it's just very heartwarming, right? Like how transformative LinkedIn is. And this is just an example, right, of just making people extremely productive and successful.
We wouldn't have a lot of those people that are involved in our project. We wouldn't have, because we wouldn't have had means of contacting them if LinkedIn wasn't there. So for us, it's a channel to connect to the people that we wouldn't be able to connect with or even know about otherwise. So I'm comfortable staying here in Dublin because I can jump on LinkedIn and see the entire ecosystem of who's over in Silicon Valley and connect with any of them if I want to. Whereas it'd be very difficult for me to get visibility on who those people are, what they're doing if LinkedIn wasn't there. So.
Hi, Brandon. You make it look like it's so effortless and it's so casual the way you approach all these things, but that's actually it's so much work in the background of what you're doing, and it's so much drive to get there.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, at what point during your BA degree in mechanical engineering, which is very unusual to find in the innovative space, at what point did you know that you weren't going to follow into manufacturing engineering, and at what point did you know, because you've tried so many ideas?
Yeah.
And you just keep going and keep going and keep going.
It's probably when I was in fourth year and I still didn't understand Pythagoras' theorem. So I couldn't change the tire of a car still. So I always liked engineering because it gives you a wide range of possibilities. Engineering you can go into pretty much any industry and any sector, and it's kind of just one of those broad stroke. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to do something kind of interesting, but I didn't know in what space. And engineering allowed me to kind of have 4 years to look around at a bunch of different things. So I looked at renewable energy, I looked at kind of the business side of engineering, and looked at a whole bunch of different sectors that I wouldn't have had access to if I kind of went into something more niche. So.
I'm curious, talking about direct competitors, who are they? Like Soundhound, Shazam?
So Soundwave and Shazam, they're pulling down kind of real world music that's being listened to at an exact moment in time and at an exact place. Our closest competitors, there's probably two. The first is sound tracking. Sound tracking is an application that allows you to create an online memory, so you can tag again, as I was saying, type in the song that you've listened to, type in your location, type in who you were with, and take a photograph, and you can bundle all of that together as a kind of one experience in time. So we could all take a picture here today and tag everybody and say this was the song that we listened to, and then in a year's time I could look back in a kind of a nostalgic type of way and say, oh, I remember that song, I remember those people in that place. So it's more of a kind of a defined scope of time, one song representing a period in your life or an event that you went to. On the kind of more real-time aspect of what we're doing, Last.fm was a very successful company back in the day. They did what we're doing for desktop, really successful. They got like tens of hundreds of millions of users almost. And what they would do is track what people are listening to on their laptops. Unfortunately for them, they sold in what I feel is a little bit prematurely, but they sold for a great deal of cash. But then after that, they just stopped innovating, and they never made an effort to get to mobile fully. They didn't look at trends and see that people were starting to use mobile more and more for listening to music. And as a result, they kind of are dying from having too many features. They kept stacking more and more features onto their service, and now nobody knows what's going on in there. It's like a jungle. So they've just essentially given up trying. And they were kind of the closest. And if they cracked mobile, we wouldn't have been able to exist almost, I would say.
Just in terms of like the product itself and user experience, I know it's kind of running in the background the whole time, tracking what everyone's listening to, but to me, anyway, it doesn't sound like the type of app that I would actively log into every day to check out, see, like, to find new music. Is there a worry about like people deleting the app to save space or something like that and not finding that as useful?
Sure. So I mean, definitely, we're not looking at daily active users. We're looking at like monthly active users, because it is that type of user experience where you're not looking for new music every day. You're looking for new music when you want to find new music, and that's not every day, In terms of people deleting the app, it's got very minimal, negligible, I can never say that word, impact on the phone itself. So in terms of deleting it for space or because you're worried it might be doing something else, it's very minimal impact. So I don't think people would delete it for that reason. There's always going to be people that will download an app to check it out for 30 seconds and go, oh yeah, cool, not for me, and then delete it, and that's just a fact of life. App products have very high churn rates just because, to be honest, most people download an app because it's either in a top 10 list or because it's got a cool looking logo, and for no other reason, So once they actually figure out what it is, they might not actually go, okay, this isn't something for me. But we're focused on just enhancing the user experience for the people that do think it's a product for them, So.
I think sitting down is the way to go now. But so in terms of the 1 million that you raised, did you need the 1 million, or did you just raise because that was available to you?
Yeah.
How much did you give up for that? Like how much equity? So
it was a little bit of both in terms of what our thinking. We came out of an accelerator program in Dublin last year. Everybody else was raising. So the end of the program it's a 3-month long program. At the end of the program, they bring in about 200 investors. You do your 5-minute pitch, and then you get 5 minutes kind of afterwards for Q&A. The whole idea is that you're pitching this day about trying to raise some capital. It's the first time a lot of people are trying to raise. And what we noticed is in previous years, everybody was trying to raise 50K or 100K or 75K. And then we were sitting there and we were looking over at Silicon Valley, and everybody's trying to raise 1 million and 2 million and 3 million. And we were like, a company in Dublin and a company in Silicon Valley, they're going after the same market and they want to build the same types of products. So why are the Irish companies trying to build it with 75K and the Americans are trying to build it with 1 million? So we were very much of the opinion that we were going to go gung-ho at it, and we were going to put a big old price tag on what we were doing. And if people bought into that, great, and we'd do it properly. And if people didn't buy into that, how bad, we'll rally back with another idea that they will, So for us, it was important to stand out from the crowd as well. So when we stood up on that final day and everybody was, I'm pitching today and this is my product and I'd like 50K for 50% of my company, we stood up and we said, we're raising $1 million and this is why, and we believe we can stand alongside toe-to-toe with Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and if you believe that as well, then come join us, and I think kind of trying to separate ourselves from the crowd in that regard definitely helped people pay more attention to what we were doing. We didn't necessarily need all the capital, but again, it's always good to raise when you can and what you can. It's a lot of instability and insecurity with a startup. So having that in the bank, giving you kind of 12, 18 months roadmap without needing to worry about fundraising, allows you to really focus on the product and what you should be doing to actually better the business, as opposed to worrying again, okay, God, I need to figure out how to get more cash to pay people, you know. So it was important for us to raise the right amount.
Do you have a question in the back there?
Hi, Nicolas here. I have the question about, like, we all know that Ireland is a very important country for music in general. And what was the reception of some music labels, important, small ones, regarding eventually your application? And what is the reception of it today in Ireland, but for them?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Oh, just wondering, like, what is the reception, the interest that the music labels
from the music industry? Yeah, it's great. So the industry fought against technology for a long time, and I think they finally came to their senses and realized they're going to have to embrace it as opposed to fight it and throw lawsuits against it. So I suppose one of the most important metrics for the music industry over the last number of decades has been understanding and analyzing what songs people are purchasing. That data is no longer relevant for two reasons. First off, because 95% of music is now downloaded illegally, so they don't have visibility on that. And the second reason is the 5% that's downloaded legally. That's where the buck stops in terms of analytics. They can see somebody purchase the song, but then that's it. Did they play the song? Did they play it every day? Did they love it? Did they hate it? Did they share it? You know, they have no understanding of that type of data. So when we come along and we can say, hey, you know, not only can I tell you who your customer is, I can tell you where they are, when they're listening to their music, which music they're listening to, which music they're not, which music they're sharing, you know, which songs in real time they're listening to as they listen to them. That really excited them. So we've got a lot of inbound requests from radio stations, from the labels, from the pretty much every segment of the music industry looking for access to this data, because they understand that it's essentially a real-time market probe for their market, and their market makes them money, so they need to understand what their market's doing.
Thank you.
Hi. I talked a while back with some of the people that work at Groove Shark back when I was looking for a job. And I remember them telling me, if you come and join us, just so you know, we could be gone tomorrow. We have lawsuits pretty much running all day long. And do you live with that in mind, thinking that tomorrow could be your last, you know, day at your job, and then you live with the fear that basically your project is so, because it's in such an early phase, and there is so much traction in both ways, against and for it?
Sure. I think they're in a slightly different boat because they're operating again in a different space. They're operating in the consumption space, and there's all sort of grey kind of areas that they're operating in as to whether it's legal or not legal. We're not operating in the consumption space. We're more in the discovery space. There's obviously a threat always associated with a startup that there is a bit of instability there or a lack of security. I think as you build, it becomes more secure. So we've enough capital in the bank that we could not make money for the next 18 months and we can still pay everybody. We've got our own offices. We don't have a canteen quite like you guys yet, but we are getting more and more stable, and it's allowing us to feel more comfortable in what we are doing. So the big issue for us always, or the big question was, is product market fit. I think we proved in the last couple of weeks that there is a product market fit. So now it's a case for us to iterate and optimize on that. So for us, it could be today or tomorrow that we're wiped out of business. I'm hoping that it's not. And to be honest, I try not to think about it too much either. I'm just too focused on what we are doing to enhance our business.
A couple of last questions.
Hi, Brendan. You mentioned earlier that you have access, say, to newsfeed and other information that people have on their phones. It was potentially an option for you. How important do you find that security is, these days with data access and stuff like that?
Huge. Yeah, huge. It's very important for us that we're working with the users to see what information they're comfortable sharing and what information they're not. So before we went live, we did a 1,000-person beta test for 12 weeks, iterating the product 6 times over those 12 weeks, based solely on what the users were saying in terms of, actually, I don't like sharing this information, or actually, I don't want you to have that information. So we're quite confident when we went live then that we had kind of comprehensive understanding of where the line lay with privacy. But the most important thing, and I think we've seen it from some of the bigger companies like Facebook, it's important that the power is in the user's hands to change their preferences and to understand they have the ability to change those preferences. And as long as the user is aware of that and is aware of what data they're giving and what data they're choosing not to give, I think there's no problem, you know.
Hi, Brendan. I'm using the app Soundwave. I've been using it since it started. It's brilliant, and I can see you're a big fan of Alt J.
Yeah, great band.
Does everyone automatically follow the founders when they join?
Yeah, so for now they do. So one of the issues that we saw is the first year we thought and talked a lot about the first user experience. The very first time somebody enters this app, and it's a new app and a new ecosystem, and you know, we're throwing a lot of new ideas at them in terms of features. And one of the things we were quite worried about is before we had that auto follow in there. If you were to enter in the app and you go straight into the activity feed and it's empty, and then you go to your profile and it's empty, and you're not following anybody, and you're not really too sure what you're meant to be doing. So a quick fix for us was that we just say, let's say we auto follow the 5 founders or the 5 team members, just so that when you go into the activity feed, you can see, you know, Brendan played this song 60 seconds ago and Craig played that song 2 hours ago, and then you kind of get a better comprehension of what it is. Oh, this is my activity feed. This shows all the activity of the people I follow, and you know, we make it very clear as well that you can delete us straight away if you want to, but it's just to kind of give a bit of a hand-holding exercise for the first time user.
Yeah, I just one more. I think actually here on Biz, if you use that, they do that as well. It's the LinkedIn integrated app. It sounds like there aren't too many companies doing what you're doing in terms of the discovery and analytics side of business. So, seeing as there aren't many competitors, what do you see as the biggest threat?
The biggest threat for us is it's really interesting. We've never really pivoted since we started. We haven't really changed ideas or changed the vision too much. But when we launched, we almost overnight went from a music discovery app to essentially a music social network. So there's a slight difference. We thought it was going to be a music discovery app that had social elements in it, and that you could, if you wanted to, kind of follow some people. But there's a lot you can do in there outside of that as well. But everybody has started using it as a social network. So we're seeing all these tweets coming in saying, "Hey, this is like Twitter for music," or "This is like Instagram for music." But with that comes a much bigger task in that you have to maintain this ecosystem and constantly make the ecosystem feel like it's alive. So an example would be if we have 1 million users, but I'm on the app and I'm not following anybody and nobody's following me. There could be 1 million users, but to me the app looks dead. I'm not seeing anything new and I don't know anybody there. So it's very important for us now to cross-pollinate our users so that they start following each other and they start following and finding new people to pull in to follow. And I think Twitter were one of the first to kind of recognize that problem, and they did a very big study, and they realized that if they could get a user to download Twitter and then within, I think, the first week be following 7 people and have 7 people following them, I think their conversion rate on staying or retaining as a user was, you know, multiple times increased. So that's our big issue now, is that we've got work to do on the finding people and on the searching and bringing in new people to suggest to people to follow. So that's an issue for us, is that we don't become stagnant, so that a month later that it's still the same product and still nobody has any followers and still following nobody, and they go, well, I don't really want to use this because no one's using it, and there might be millions of people using it, but to them it feels like no one's using it. So that's our big task at the minute.
Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Brendan. I think that was a very informative discussion for all of us, and amazing to kind of hear those experiences. So with that, I think it's the conclusion of our session. So Brendan, thank you very much. A big round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
I want to just literally say thank you very much. This has been super wonderful. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the attendance, and we wish you all the best. And we're going to send out some links so we can update our status update on this great the company, and hopefully we get some more traction for you on LinkedIn today. Okay, thank you.